Good day, everybody. Rob Mazak here. I am a psychic medium, and I'm sure some of you have heard some of my talks. I don't necessarily do anything scripted. I just go with the flow and see how it goes. So you may find me bouncing back and forth a little bit, but the intent of this particular podcast is to talk about what it is like to be a medium, at least from my perspective. Now, I'm sure that there's many definitions for being a medium or what a medium is. But most people would probably accept the definition that a medium is somebody who has the ability to communicate with the dead or those who have passed on from having lived a human life. And some also specialize in connecting with animals that have passed on as well. And so, and I do agree that communicating with the dead is part of being a medium. And we're going to circle back around a little bit to some different ideas of what that might mean. So, but other people might accept other definitions or have other definitions. My definition is a little more expanded than that. Yes, communicating with the dead, but it's also, I think, includes the ability to communicate with other entities, beings, or otherwise that are living or existing outside of what we know as this human reality, this reality we call Earth, whatever that means to you. There's so many theories out there, it's incredible. My personal feeling is it's more geared towards a simulation type reality, but once again, we'll come back to that in a little bit. But I think probably one of the best definitions I've heard about what a medium is came from a student that I had brought on. She didn't need a lot of mentoring from me, just more of a realization and validation of her gifts. But that's one of the questions I ask early on, is what someone would define being a medium or a psychic might be, right? So let's back up just a little bit. So being a medium usually means you're also psychic, but psychics are not always mediums. So my definition of psychic would be connecting to the here and now. What's going on in the client's or the person's life that I'm working with? What can I see is happening right now? The energy that they give off, all that. And what could be a possible future outcome if they continue what they're doing. And kind of drawing them a picture of what life can be like if they don't change or adapt or do something different. So that's my general definition of being a psychic. And everybody has their own. That's okay. There's a lot of fancy names for all these things, but I choose to use the ones that are more simplistic, right? But back to the definition that my student had, and I'd asked her, at our first meeting, how would you define being a medium? What does that mean to you? What is that like? Explain what happens. And she told me something that I probably will never forget, and I use it quite often when I try to describe what medium is. And it actually helps define it a little bit better, I think. She said that I feel like I'm just part of this big medium that we all exist in. The entire universe, everything that exists is within this medium. And I've simply developed or been given a gift or whatever the case may be to have the ability to tune into certain things. And it's like being part of the sea as an individual drop. What affects the sea affects the individual drops. And, connecting across should not be that hard. So I really like that definition because it really also supports where we're at with science nowadays. And so if we look at quantum physics, quantum theory, quantum mechanics, whatever, the quantum, right? It really does support the fact that we live in a reality, or reality is something that, or where everything and anything and all possibilities exist all at the same time. And we'll talk about that just a little bit. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a quantum professor or any of that. But, I've read a lot of it and I can explain the basics of it. I understand it completely when I read it, but for some reason, my non-scientific mind has trouble breaking it down like the way I read it. However, let's talk about one simple little thing that really kind of started, I think, my understanding started quantum physics and quantum science, and that is the double slit experiment. If this interests you at all, you should go look it up. There's volumes and volumes, and they still run the simulation a lot. And so it's basic. So it was originally a basic experiment. I don't remember why they did it, to be honest, but they had some kind of electron generator, if you will, or like a little electron gun. I don't know what it was exactly, but it could propel electrons, little individual electrons, at this wall or board or whatever that they had set up, and it had two long slits in it parallel to each other, going up and down. And what they did is they wanted to see how electrons would react. Would they choose one slit over the other? And looked at the patterns where the electrons hit on the wall behind the wall with the slits. And as you can imagine, they would run the experiment, and when they looked at this wall at the backside, about roughly half, 50% of electrons went to the left and some went to the right, and they basically had the same pattern as the slits that developed on the back wall. It seems like it's not rocket science, right? But what they noticed is that when they watched the experiment, the outcome completely changed. And it's not just watching it with like somebody staring at the machine while it's working. Even when they set a camera there, no human interference whatsoever other than turning the machine on, the particles, the electrons developed, they developed this pattern on the back wall that was like, it almost completely covered the back wall. There was no individual, it was hard to tell where individual electrons actually hit. And so it's like basically it created this wave pattern, and is endless possibilities, if you will. And so it didn't matter how many times they ran the experiment, how many different ways they observed it, right? From afar, close, camera, naked eye, it all is the same. And so basically what it proved, the way I understand it, is that electrons as we know it in the old atom, the model of the atom, supposedly the smallest particle, which we know now these days is not. But at the time, that's what they thought. That the electron doesn't like circle around with the neutrons and all this stuff, right? The electrons are not predictable whatsoever. They're in every possible place all at the same time. And the difference is when somebody observes it, it then becomes something. It becomes whatever, right? This is hard for me to explain, but I think you understand what I'm saying, is that what changes outcomes for everything in this universe And it even goes back to the definition we talked about from my student. Everything and anything, complete creation, as religious texts will say. Everything that could exist does exist and always has existed. So what I think is happening, my belief, I'm not offering these things as proof, you can go do your own research, right? Is that we are actually living in a reality where everything and anything is possible. And I would go step a little farther than just observation, but thoughts, words, actions, right? I think those would all count as observations. And this is where manifestation comes in, but that's a whole nother podcast, if you will, right? But so if this is true, and we are part of this cosmic sea of possibilities, it's almost like looking at the universe or everything that exists as like the internet, right? And so our houses are completely filled. Every space that we think is empty is filled. Radio waves, right? Cell waves. Everything that you can imagine is within our empty space, right? And I think that we can connect to the cosmic internet, if you will, the endless, eternal amount of information that we are embedded in as a tiny little insignificant dot, our own little electron. We can create, we can learn, we can connect, we can gather any kind of information that we could possibly want. I mean, just like the internet now. If you want to learn about 3-humped camels, if they exist, you can go on the internet, pull out your phone, boom, it's there. I mean, almost anything you want to know, you can find. And I think the medium, quote unquote, that we live in, this reality, right? I think let me back up just a little bit. I think the reality that we think we exist is just a very, very tiny sliver of all that is possible, right? However, if we live in this within this endless sea of information, why can't we connect with anything and find out anything we want? Connect with whoever we want. Living, dead, other realms, other planets, anywhere, anytime. Why couldn't we, right? I think we can. This even works with energy work, right? And just quick little tidbit on that, doing energy work is no different at a distance across the other side of the planet as it is with somebody sitting or laying next to me while I'm working on them. No difference. The outcome's the same. Why is that? Because we're affecting this person by their connection to the cosmic universe, internet, that we are all in. So it's just, to me, connecting with someone who has passed does not necessarily support or prove the fact that life goes on after this. I do believe we do, yes, but it doesn't prove it. I think what's happening in many ways is that the energy of the person who formerly lived in this meat suit we call humans left what you might call a residue, left that information ingrained in this cosmic internet, that once you've learned to dial into that particular frequency of the person you were trying to connect with, it really shouldn't be very difficult to find out information and to look at that life and to help a client or to help the particular person you're working with. It really, to me, is that simple, right? And the other way to look at it might be that, I mean, if you look at the human body, we have this huge biofield around us. And then some healers that do sound healing and stuff will quote that the energy field around us goes out as far as 6 to 8 feet, right? And in the opinions of these healers that quote this, everything that has ever happened to us, every life experience we've had, past, present, future lives, are all embedded in our energy, and it extends outside of us. So if there's something that is off or wrong or out of balance, it should be in that field, right? So if I'm going to be working with a client and they're sitting across the table from me, how difficult is it to learn how to connect with their energy and tell them something that they know already at a deep subconscious level, perhaps, that they're just not been able to tap into? So basically, you are taking, like, if you're trying to hook up to the Wi-Fi, and instead of using it across an aerial broadcast, right, you take and plug in that Ethernet cord, and you get a direct connection. And to me, that's another way to look at connecting with those that have passed or crossed over or died in someone's life, right? Because, to be honest, everybody is very, very much connected to all there is. And it really is happening, though, outside of our conscious abilities, if you will. So our brain is basically a couple different divisions. I mean, there's lots of them, but just the simple basics is, you have your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. And the conscious mind is only about 5%, roughly, of the activity of the mind. And the rest of it happens at a subconscious level, where all our programming and our experiences and all these things get embedded in there, right? But what I find I find through my hypnosis practice, and I've really, really learned this, and it's more justified for me now, that the subconscious is the hub, or the, whatever you want to call, the router to this cosmic internet, to the source, to God, however you want to look at it. It connects us to everything that you could ever possibly want to know, everything you could possibly want to experience. But the thing is, it's very difficult at best to tap into the subconscious on purpose. And I believe that in a lot of ways, quote unquote, mediums have really learned to tap into the subconscious, and in turn connect to every bit of information that is possible to find, and discover the ability to connect to very specific frequencies of what the client is looking for. And so let me give you a little example what I mean by that. And so when I was really trying to refine my medium abilities, I mean, I've had them all my life, but once again, we can talk about that another time. But when I was trying to refine it, I went to some classes by a really, really high level psychic medium palm reader in Austin. And he would host classes, and one of the classes he did just completely changed the way I do things, and the way I look at things, and the way I connect. And so what the exercise was to sit across, facing a partner or a person that you've never met per se, never worked with before, don't know anything about. And each of you has a small piece of paper and something to write with, and several exercises, but one of them was to write down the name of the person you wanted the other to connect to, someone who died, of course, their name, how old they were when they passed, and simply exchange papers, and sit in meditation, and then share with what you found. And I found that I was nearly 100% accurate on everything that all the other people I worked with wanted to find. And it just completely amazed me. And so this person went on to talk about why that is, and I also did more research to support it, is what he claims is happening is that we are the act of me or anybody else writing down the person's name, how old they were. The age is important, so you can clarify who you're actually connecting to, but the name, right? That act of writing that creates this quantum connection, residual energy, if you will, of that person, so that you can then latch onto that frequency, connect, and discover anything you need to about that person, or anything that the client needs to know from that person who passed. And I would take that even farther. It's not just old school writing it on a piece of paper, although that's very effective. What I have found, is it's the act of someone doing other things, emailing me the name and the age, texting it to me, simply saying it also creates this instant connection to that person for me. Now, I don't know if it works that way for everybody, but this is, like I said at the beginning, this is my experience. And I found that I also got more validation when I started to get information from items from other people, right? They're bringing in, well, this was my dad's, this was my mother's, same thing, right? Items, things carry the residual energy of the person who had it last or most. And I learned some really hard lessons on that one. But residual energy does hang around. So I guess the question then is, do we really talk to those who have died? Or are we talking to their residual energy? Are we connecting because it still remains? If we exist in this reality, how can we not exist? We might exist in a different form. And I truly believe that. And we might move on and have other experiences, but the experience of each life is there for the tapping into. And so, you can try it yourself. It's kind of cool. It's kind of fun. And it's really, really awesome when you begin to get validation, when people that you've never met come to you and ask you to connect to whatever, Aunt Susie or whatever, and you do, and you help them get the answers that they were seeking. Help them through tough times. Or even if nothing else, you're getting this overhead view, if you will, from the other side. Something outside of this reality. So I don't know if I've confused you more or if I've kind of given you some ideas. But I also don't think being a medium is something evil. A lot of the religious texts talk about not doing divinity and connecting to the dead, right? But most of the religious scriptures are filled with connections to the spiritual world or spirits or those that have passed, right? And so does that really make it evil because somebody in the Bible is or other religious texts are having those experiences, yet we're not supposed to do it on purpose? My personal belief, not to downgrade any religion, I'm not doing that. That's not what the purpose is. My belief is that if you are meant to connect with entities, energy, loved ones, those that have died, however you want to look at that, then it's going to happen. And the thing is, you have to figure out what you're going to do with it, because I think we all can do that. I say that because how many people have you known, even yourself perhaps, have had a loved one die, grandmother, father, whatever, brother, and they suddenly begin to show up in your dreams and you're having conversations with them. Is that not connecting with the dead? Granted, you're not doing it with your conscious mind because your conscious mind is turned off when you sleep, but you are still connecting. So does that mean you're evil? I don't know. I couldn't, that's up to you to equate that definition. But like I said, I think this gift will follow you. It will chase you down if you're meant to do it. Everybody can do it. The question is, do you want to, right? And are you already having those things? And if you are, why not make sense of it? Why not? Because if we're all connected to everything and anything and every possibility that there could possibly be, why are we just going to eat, work, consume, and die? Why aren't we expanding our consciousness, our gifts, our abilities, and doing something with it? There's so much to learn. I mean, just in our reality, the limitation that we have through our five senses is astronomical. What the amount of light spectrum, for example, in this reality, we can only see less than 1% of the available light spectrum, less than 1%. Yet, what we envision as our reality is enormous as it is. Can you imagine being able to tap into anything you want to see, to know? I mean, I think that's also where remote viewing and things like that begin to come in. Some might argue with me on that, but looking in on others or situations is entirely possible because we are connected. You just have to simply figure out how to dial into that frequency. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of touch on some things about being a medium, and I know it was a little bit all over the place, but I encourage you to learn a little bit more about these things because the information is there. Nothing is hidden. Absolutely nothing is hidden, even in this reality. You just got to know where to find it, right? But quantum science, quantum physics, quantum mechanics, all that, it is catching up and mirroring the metaphysical and spiritual abilities and experiences that many of us have and are doing on purpose, sometimes not on purpose. Science is now proving the existence of what we just talked about, all possibilities, right? And so why not take advantage of that? And if nothing else, learn new things for yourself to evolve as a human. I think that's why we're here. I know that's why we're here. And you know that too. So let's connect. Let's learn. Sometimes it helps to find somebody to guide you along. Of course I do that, but I'm not the only one out there. And I'm not for everybody. I get that. But sometimes we just need to get out of our own way and figure out how to ask for help, right? And so you don't have to do it. You don't have to do these things as a professional. You can do it simply to help people. You can call it whatever you want. Many of the religious people that have these gifts and can't really think outside of that religion, if you will, they'll give it other names, like I have the gift of prophecy. Well, what is that exactly? That's being psychic, is it not? Right? You can call it whatever you like. Doesn't matter. You don't have to call it anything. Anyway, I will go ahead and wrap up this podcast, but I just want to give you a little food for thought. Just remember, I'm not offering anything in this talk as proof. Just having a conversation and challenging you to look at and research some of the things I talked about. You will find yourself truly amazed and you probably end up down a rabbit hole. Anyway, I would like to hear from you when you get a chance. You can contact me, or you can find my contact information on my website at lifebymazak.com, LIFEBYMAZAK.com. mazak.com. I look forward to hearing from you and talk to you soon.